Have you ever thought about what you could learn about a whole country just by looking at one single ordinary day? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We are hitting pause on January 16th, 2026 to see what the day's headlines can tell us about where India is headed.
So, really, what can 24 hours of news actually tell us about the path of the world's largest democracy? Let's jump in and find out.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to look at 5 key stories from the day. We'll start with technology, then zoom out to see India's place in the world. After that, we'll check the economic pulse, see what's firing up domestic growth, and then wrap things up with a pretty big moment from the world of sports.
Okay, first up, technology. And what's so fascinating about the news on this day is the split-screen view you get. On one side, you have technology being put to work in the most remote villages, and on the other, you have this huge leap towards a high-tech, AI-powered future.
And this right here just shows you that story perfectly. You've got this super practical, on-the-ground solution on the left, and this massive, almost futuristic ambition on the right. Let's break down what's happening in each of these pictures.
So our first story comes from the state of Tripura. The local rural bank there launched something called TJB on Wheels. Now, this isn't just some run-of-the-mill mobile ATM, no way. It's actually India's very first that is powered completely by the sun.
But why is a solar-powered ATM such a big deal?
Well, for starters, this van is an absolute game-changer for villages where electricity can be a real issue. It literally brings banking services right to people's doorsteps. It's a massive boost for what we call financial inclusion, it's great for the environment, and it's even got the backing of the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD. It's just a perfect example of tech solving real-world problems.
Now, let's totally switch gears, but stay on the tech theme. On the very same day, one of India's biggest companies, Reliance Jio, made a huge announcement. They declared their plan to launch the country's first ever Made in India AI platform.
And the key thing to grab here is their vision. They aren't just building some fancy AI for corporations, they're calling it a people-first platform. And this quote says it all, right? The goal is to get AI into the hands of every single Indian, in their own language, on the phone in their pocket, and at a price they can actually afford. I mean, think about that. A solar ATM van and a nationwide AI platform all making news on the same day.
All right, so next up, let's zoom out and look at India's place in the world. On January 16th, 2 different stories gave us a peek into how the country is engaging globally. One about its people moving around the world, and the other about bringing the world to India.
Let's start with just a number. That number is 80. Now, on its own, it doesn't mean much, but this number tells a really important story. This was India's rank in the 2026 Henley Passport Index, which is basically a report card for how powerful a country's passport is.
So, what does being number 80 in the world actually get you? Well, it pointed to a slow but steady improvement in how easily Indian citizens could travel. On this day in 2026, if you had an Indian passport, you could get into 55 countries without having to get a visa beforehand. It's a real, tangible measure of growing global access.
But, global influence isn't just about how easily your citizens can travel out. It's also about being a place that brings the world in. And that's exactly what was going on in New Delhi. On this exact day, India was hosting the 28th Commonwealth Speakers Conference. Now, this is a really big deal. We're talking about parliamentary leaders from over 60 different nations all gathered in one place. By hosting an event like this, India is putting its own democratic traditions right on the world stage for everyone to see. Okay, let's pivot again and take a quick look at the economy. Every day there's new data, and on January 16th, the big story was all about something called wholesale inflation.
And there's the magic number, 0.83%. This was the inflation rate for wholesale prices from the month before, December 2025. So the question is, what does a number like this really tell us about what's going on with the economy?
Well, a number by itself doesn't tell you much. You need context. See, this 0.83% was important because it showed a return to positive inflation after a couple of months when prices were actually falling, which isn't always a good thing. And as you can see here, it was way lower than the 2.57% from a year earlier. So, all in all, it suggested things were becoming a bit more stable and predictable.
So beyond those big top-line numbers, other things were happening to really strengthen India's own internal growth engines. 2 headlines really jumped out, one from a very traditional core sector and another from the heart of the new economy.
First, let's talk about the super important dairy industry. A major deal was signed between the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that's ICAR, and the National Dairy Development Board, or NDDB. What's cool here is the partnership itself.
You're basically connecting the country's top scientists directly with the needs of farmers on the ground. The whole point is to boost milk production and, ultimately, the farmers' incomes.
And from dairy, we jump straight over to startups. Turns out, January 16th is officially National Startup Day in India. It's a day set aside to really celebrate the country's entrepreneurs and the whole innovative ecosystem that's grown around them.
And there's a reason they picked this specific date. It's actually the anniversary of the launch of the Startup India initiative way back in 2016. The goal of that whole policy was to make a fundamental change in the country's mindset, to build an economy powered not just by people looking for jobs, but by people who create them. All right, for our final story from January 16th, we're going to step away from policy and economics and into the world of sports. A major announcement was made that marked the end of an era and had a really interesting connection to India.
The huge news was that the Australian cricket captain and absolute legend of the game, Alyssa Healy, announced she was retiring from all international cricket. And the part that made this headline really hit home in India, her very last international series was scheduled to be against the Indian women's team. I mean, what a way to go out against a tough rival on the biggest stage.
So let's just take a step back and look at the big picture from this one day. We saw tech being built for everyone, from a remote village to the whole nation. We saw a country connecting more with the world, both by hosting others and by making it easier for its own people to explore.
We saw signs of a steadying economy, efforts to strengthen core industries, and the celebration of a new entrepreneurial fire. It was a day of fresh starts, smart moves, and even a bittersweet goodbye. It all kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we could look back from the year 2030, which one of these headlines from January 16th would we say really shaped India's story?